Ideally, loads of people are going to listen to this. Some strongmen, some runners, which is weird because I feel like I've not really cornered the running market yet.
Me neither. Don't worry about that one.
But there's a lot to cover. There's a lot to cover from a lot of different angles. But if we were looking at the first paragraph on John Clark's Wikipedia or Instagram bio, whatever.
Depends who's writing the Wikipedia section, yeah. Yeah, I suppose majority of people from your traditional audience may remember me from when I was a competitive strongman. So I was 2 times Britain's natural strongest man, 2 times Midland's strongest man, back in 2016, I think it was, 2016, 2017. Since pretty much for all intent and purposes retired from strongman and now entered the world of what me and a friend call elite idiocy, which is basically a range of charity challenges testing all sorts of different physical attributes to try and raise money, try and raise awareness, and to try and make a bit of a difference in the world that I live in.
Yeah, that's a pretty succinct way of summing up who you are, which is handy. It's better than I could have done, which is why I don't try and prepare anything, because I'd just do a bad job of it. So the strongman side, you were, I think I first met you at England's Strongest Man at the XL Arena.
That was the one that Paul won.
Yeah, when I was coaching Paul Smith.
Yeah.
You.
My arch nemesis.
No.
Not really an arch nemesis. Every time I competed against Paul, he always beat me. He was always a yardstick I measured myself against, although I've probably never told him that.
Oh yeah, we'll edit this out. Like, I don't edit podcasts, but
yeah. Don't tell the little hobbit that. It's fine.
If you can just say like Paul Smith's a dick at some point, I can just clip it in whenever we need. But we're talking about, like, you won Britain's Natties, you competed as an open strongman. Where did you see yourself as an athlete? Were you just a strongman? Yeah,
I think back then, to try and compete at that level, you can't do anything but live and breathe, and that is your life. So yeah, I guess if it's that classic, who are you, what do you do? If you'd have asked me that question back then I was an aspiring high-level strength athlete. I competed a little bit in powerlifting as well, but that was just a bit of a sideshow rather than the focus. But yeah, back then, that was purely focused on trying to be a strongman and get to world's strongest man and see if I could crack into that top tier and that elite level of athletes.
Yeah, which you were sort of an annoying competitor to see at competitions because you just get in the way a lot, do really well, didn't really have any weak events either. Like,
I was fairly, I say to a lot of people in strongman, you either have to be pretty good across the board and not excel in any one particular thing, or be so good at a few things that hides your weaknesses. Yeah. And I think I was definitely the former. I think I ended up being known for my deadlift, but that was just because of the number and the fact I was drug free. In comparison to the field of athletes I was competing in, it wasn't particularly impressive other than the fact that it had been done without any gear. But everything else was pretty much across the board. I could move a yoke, could move with farmers, had an average push press, could squat a big weight, could deadlift a big weight, which made me often get in the way of other athletes because I'd take points off them in disciplines that they'd normally excel in. Yeah,
when I coach people, you sort of say you need to beat the best deadlifters in a pressing event. You need to beat the best pressers in the deadlift event. Beat static people in moving stuff. Like, no one at the moment in strongman, no one's going to beat Tom in stones unless he cocks up again. But you might be able to get points off him in another event. So focus on being close to someone in points in their best event and then beating them in their worst event. And you were like testament to that. When did you... So why strongman? When did you get into strongman? And
so I actually broke my neck playing rugby, which sounds a lot worse than it was. I had a scrum collapse and I felt a couple of clicks in my neck, and it turned out, I'll save the long boring explanation of how we figured it out, but long story short, there were 2 hairline fractures in my neck, which meant the recommendation was 6 months away from rugby, at least a year, unless I'm going to change position. Now, I'd like to convince myself that I could play outside of the front row, but I definitely don't have those skills that pay any bills. So it was, well, I'm going to have to take a decent time away from rugby. And at the time I was playing semi-professionally, getting paid to play. And that was what I identified as an athlete. It was a rugby player. And I was just training in our local kind of independent strength gym. And I don't know whether you remember a guy called Rich Senewald. So he was an under 105 competitor back then. So similar age to me. But anyway, he was training in the squat right next to me, and we just got chatting, and he was like, "Oh, you're pretty strong. What is it that you do? You don't look like a normal rugby player. You're lifting bigger weights than the other guys I've seen in the gym." I was like, "It's because I'm one of the few rugby players that actually squats rather than just his chest and arms." But yeah, so we got chatting, and long story short, he said he was a strength athlete and he was a strong man. And I sound really old now, but that was back in the day where the only way you could find out about strongman was through Sugden Barbell.
Yes.
It was before, where it was Facebook, you still had to log onto a computer to access Facebook. It wasn't like it is now where you just type in strongman and the world's your oyster. And yeah, so he was like, "If you ever want to compete, why don't you train with me?" And I had nothing to do for the next 12, 18 months. So I was like, well, see how strong we can get. And then long story short, he knew Lawrence Charlet, went down train with him, got to know him. He said to me that he thinks that I've got potential in the sport. And ended up training with him on and off for a couple of years. And about a year into the sport, went to my first England Strongest Man, won my first British drug-free title, and so on from there. So it was kind of an accidental falling into it. It was by a chance meeting with another strength athlete, and I was like, yeah, I'll have a go.
That seems like that's such a common story to hear as well. Like, you get athletes that's like, I was doing so-and-so, I was training, really enjoyed training, accidentally got really strong. Now I'm a world's strongest man, or like now I'm doing this. And it's like, I think part of it is, if you take that route in, you end up just enjoying training, and you're training for something else. So training becomes a release, it becomes fun. As the amount of people who've told me they're going to win world's strongest man, and it's like, but you've never competed, and you hate training. I
think the thing is, like, back then there wasn't a comparison. So the only real comparison you had to how strong you were was world's strongest man.
Yeah.
Which is like comparing my sprint ability to Usain Bolt. It's so far removed. You don't have a normal everyday comparison, because there wasn't. Every athlete that does strength is now uploading their deadlift, their training, their squats, their PBs, their platform lifts, and so you've got a yardstick. Whereas back then, I didn't realise how strong I was until I was training with a strength athlete that was like, "No, that's strong." I just thought I was just training. I was just trying to be stronger, and I think I had about a 240 deadlift for 3 at the time when I met Rich, and I didn't think much of that. I just thought, well, it's just what I lift.
Yeah.
And then when you then start learning about what numbers and entry levels into middle and strongest man and stuff like that, where the deadlift 280 for reps, and you're like, oh, that's not a million miles away. So I think the guys that have been around a long time, or even 5, 6, 7 years now, I think that's how they did fall into it that way, because there wasn't a measuring stick to think, oh, actually I'm strong, so I'm going to go into strongman. Whereas now, obviously, Facebook, social media, much more accessible. So I think people look at it now as a potential pathway or a sporting pathway for them to compete in from a younger age. Yeah. Whereas I think most of your Terrys, your Lawrences and guys like that came into it after playing other sports first, rather than that straight out of school, 16 years old, I'm going to be a strongman. So the world's changed quite a bit since then, really. But yeah, that's how I got into it. I fell into it and kind of had a wild 4 or 5 year ride as a result.
Yeah, and it was a really cool thing to see. And then you just sort of disappeared, and it was like all of a sudden, like, went down sort of becoming an entrepreneur, running businesses, which we'll touch on those as well. But we were chatting before we started recording, which I need to stop doing.
Miss all the good stuff.
You said you got injured at a Giants qualifier, and then so from that, essentially, why the fuck did you run? Like running's such a terrible thing to do.
It's a shit idea, can confirm. Definitely don't recommend it, especially with my training background and history of weight. But
How were you about 180 kilos?
Yeah, 100 to 108 was where I fluctuated around the 48 marathons.
When you finished strongman, were you
185?
Yeah, so that's
morbidly obese. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think my heaviest was 182 during the fat Dan era, and I didn't want to start running.
No, neither did I. And so that was the thing. So like with me, it was, I was kind of like building momentum. Every year I'd do better. And there was, at the time, there was me, Paul Smith and Aaron Page.
Yeah.
There were the three of us that we all started at the same Natties comp. And then we all tried to progress and grow and get to that. All three of us had the same aim. And it was almost like at the time, it was like those three are going to be a thorn in each other's side for the next decade.
Yeah.
Obviously, then I got to that point where I got injured and had to withdraw from me being that pain in the arse. And I know Paul and Aaron had a lot of back and forward in comps as well. Yeah. And that kind of rivalry continued. Obviously, unfortunately, we lost Aaron last year, but it was a really good rivalry between the three of us. And there was a lot of people that were like, oh, why did you stop? Like every year you were progressing, and every year all three of us were getting better. I thought we were really good for each other, because every year I'd watch Aaron's log and think I'm going to catch the bastard, and I'd watch Paul's squat and think I'm going to try and beat his squat. And
when we'd look at your deadlift and think it's probably gone on. Hopefully he's gone on.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And so it was almost like you're all progressing, you're all developing, and then suddenly I was like, announced my retirement from the sport, which is a bit kind of grandiose to do when I've only been in the sport for 4 years. It's hardly like a lifetime of career in the sport, but it was a realization that for me, strongman, I fell in love with it, and it was something that I was good at genetically and something that I worked hard at to become better year on year on year. And for me, you have two levels of, I guess, competition with any sport. You've got participation-based engagement in a sport, and then you've got elite competition. Yeah. And for me, strongman, I was never going to scratch enough itches or feel like I was progressing unless I was competing at that top table or trying to get there. And long story short, Giants Live, picked up a farmer's walk handle, and my knee just caved in on itself. And I'd been struggling with the knee for about a year, but just ignored it in typical bloke fashion. It was like, oh, fine, painkillers and a positive attitude, let's just carry on. And eventually I accepted defeat, went and saw 3 different knee specialists trying to find the answer that I wanted. Someone to say, we can fix you. And eventually they got diagnosed that patella tendon was thicker than it should be. And the only way to make it pain-free would be to essentially scrape the patella tendon down and make it smaller, which they said is fine. It's not a problem. We can do that. But they said the chance of rupture under load are very significant. They were talking about 70-80% chance of rupture because essentially it weakens the patella, which then obviously can relate to a rupture. And at the time I was squatting 365 kilos. So it's like, if my patella ruptures with that on my back,
you're in for a bad time. Yeah,
we're in for not even potentially another injury. We're in for paralysis and life-changing or potentially death.
Yeah, so, I mean, I can't remember what Mark Bell was squatting, but when his knee went, like, heavy squats going wrong.
It's not a good place to be.
You can drop a deadlift.
Yeah.
Like, you've got spotters for a bench, but...
Yeah, you can throw an overhead over your head, but a squat... Literally on you. You are literally attached to that bar, and it's taking you for a ride. You're taking that bar for a ride against gravity, and your body or gravity will decide who wins.
Yeah.
And so it got to the point where I'd just had a baby daughter. She was about a year old. My business was starting to grow, but I realised that it wasn't growing at the rate it could have done because I was prioritising training and competition over business growth. Yeah. And it was a selfish pursuit, ultimately. So I wouldn't say that I retired from strongman or stopped strongman because of family pressure or anything like that. It was what's best for my long-term development, and I'm not going to be able to compete at that top table with this injury because I won't be able to push and hit the numbers I need to hit as a pre-qualified to get to that level. That's not going to fulfill me. So being a 185 kilo morbidly obese man with a good deadlift isn't a reason to continue. So I decided to withdraw from the sport and kind of contacted all the people that sponsored me and supported me and said, look, I'm done. Thanks for everything to get me to that point. But if I never competed again, I've done a lot. I've achieved more than many hope to or could or want to. Did I get to the top table and get to worlds? No. But I look back fondly in my time as a strength athlete. So it was that point where I'm done. What now? And it was at the point where you're tying your shoelaces, struggling to walk upstairs and out of breath, just putting your shoes on. And this isn't healthy. So the aim was never to run. The aim was just to lose weight.
Okay.
So I started to get to 1 kilo, as same as I'm sure with your weight loss journey. It was just right. Let's get to the next marker. So let's get to 180, then let's get to 170, let's get to 160. And I got down to about 140 kilos. And then I took part 2 years to the day yesterday, actually, ironically. And I took part in a 24-hour world record attempt on the ski erg.
Yes, I remember this, because that was another terrible idea.
Another terrible idea that I still can't feel my little fingers as a result. So also definitely don't recommend. But so yeah, I did that at 140 kilos, and that was to try and raise money for a terminally ill child locally, which we raised a decent chunk of money for and helped him. But I did that, and it gave me more questions than answers. I was like, well, if I can do 24 hours and do an endurance event as a traditional non-endurance athlete, what else can we do? So then I did the 4-4-48, which is the 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours, which is a David Goggins challenge, where we tried to raise money for a friend's family whose parents had passed away from brain cancer. And that raised 25 grand. And again, it was just like, well, me doing stupid shit helps other people, and I get to learn about myself, and it gives me focus. And I say all the time to my clients, motivation's a terrible thing to rely on, but accountability is brilliant. So for me, these challenges gave me more accountability to continue with my weight loss, because if I'm going to run essentially 2 marathons in 2 days, I can't do that at 150, 160 kilos. I need to lose more weight to do that. So it was all around creating shorter term goals to keep me accountable to the long term goal, which was to try and get down to pre-strongman body weight.
Right.
And then, from there, then someone said, oh, why don't you try and do a triathlon? And then someone said an Ironman's the hardest triathlon. So I was like, cool, let's do that. So then started training for an Ironman, then COVID arrived.
That really...
so that really like fucked it all up.
Yeah, like on a massive scale, because I remember like following your Instagram, obviously, and Instagram's amazing because you disappeared from strongman essentially, and you're like, oh well, I'm not going to see that guy again. Like, that's really shit. But then you think, because of social media, like, it's got a lot of flaws. You go, why is he on a ski erg? Like, why is he doing this? And then you see like everything you've got planned out, and then it's here's a global pandemic, let's not be able to do an Ironman, not be able to do I can't pronounce it, the horrific desert
Marathon des Sables.
Yeah, which very much fuck that for an idea.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That's the thing I'm least looking forward to.
But so the common theme I found through being really fortunate and being able to talk to some amazing people, everyone's got a why, but what's your why? Because they're shit ideas, man.
They are shit ideas, and there's a lot of people like, oh, do you do all this charity stuff to try and learn about yourself? And I'm like, no, I know myself. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not ignorant to think that you can't learn new things about yourself, but I'm not out there trying to run 48 marathons to have an epiphany about life. And because I learned very early on, so Midland Strongest Man for me was a target I wanted to win. I wanted to win that title, and it's a really static based competition. So I was like, if you win that, you know you're fucking strong. Like 280 kilo squat for reps, 340 kilo deadlift for reps. It's like serious numbers.
Yeah.
I remember training my arse off for a year to get there, and I won it. And I remember standing on the podium getting given this trophy, and I was like, you're waiting for the heavens to open, the angels to arrive, the rainbow to appear, and God to speak to me. And I was just like, I've done it. I've now lost my training goal, my training motivation, my training accountability. What now? So for me, I know that these events are never going to, upon completion, teach me anything. They'll always leave you underwhelmed and disappointed because now you've had whatever your time building up to that event to train for, you've now lost your purpose and you've got to go find a new purpose. So for me, the why is to essentially challenge myself, challenge the established way of thinking about what a bigger man is capable of. Yep. But the underriding why across or the overwhelming why across everything is to try and teach my daughter, my stepkids, and my son when he arrives in January that hard work will elicit whatever result that you want to achieve.
That's a pretty good message to teach anyone.
Well, the thing is for me, like a lot of people say, oh, do you grow your businesses? Do you try and build wealth because you can give that money to your children? And whatever I build financially, business, anything like that, we saw in COVID can disappear like that. I could build a multi-million-pound business to give to my kids and the government could destroy it. A worldwide pandemic could destroy a life's work. But if I can teach my children that hard work, dedication, doing what you said you would, and trying to do something to help others along the way, that is a more powerful tool than any money I could ever give them, because they can then be and do anything they want in life. Want to be a doctor? Cool. Put the work in, you can become a doctor. Don't like that? Want to change career? Want to become a lorry driver? Sweet. Hard work, dedication to your new training vocation, you can now do that. And so that is my why behind everything that I've done for the last few years, is to try and show my kids that, and anyone else that cares to watch me on Instagram, that you don't have to conform to other people's opinions of what is possible. And with hard work, dedication, and a bit of uncomfortable time, you can achieve pretty much what you want in life.
I think I'm all for sort of standing up for the bigger man as well. Like, I think it's so easy for society to write people off based on how they look or the fact that they can't do stuff a lot of the time. Like, if someone who's 80 kilos and genetically in good shape rather than through hard work, it's like, oh, but I couldn't do 48 marathons. It's like, so why can this big guy do it? It's like, well, because he's going to work hard. He's going to put effort in.
Well, that's the thing I said about the 24 hours on the skier, because quite a few people were, I don't know anyone that could do that. And I was like, well, you've got people you love and you care about. They're like, yeah. If I take them away from you and then put you on a 24-hour ski erg and say, if you don't do 24 hours, you'll never see them again. You will do 24 hours. The difference is you haven't found the reason to do 24 hours on a ski erg yet. And I think we've all got different levels of what things mean to us. So for me, I guess I have a way of finding things that mean more to me than what they mean to other people, that are a way of keeping me moving and keeping me going. So, for example, the 24 hours that I did, Oscar, I just kept thinking, what if that was my daughter? Every time I thought about quitting, I was like, she's my why. Because if my daughter needed this money to try and help save her life, I'd struggle to look myself in the eye if I didn't finish.
Yeah, if you were 10 hours in and went, oh, this is hard.
Yeah, so
like, good luck.
I'll stop. It's not as hard as cancer, though, is it? Let's be honest. So, and that's the thing. So for me, I talk to a lot of people where they say, oh, I want to do this. It's like, oh, why do you want to do that? Because like the analogy or experience I mentioned earlier with the Midland's Strongest Man is, it's never the completion of the event you remember. It's the journey that takes you there. It's so cliche and everyone says it and everyone's like, yeah, okay. But I think you've got to achieve a few big things before you then genuinely realise that is the case. Probably with the Stoltmans, like, they've now achieved what they've achieved, and there's probably a little bit of emptiness there in terms of fucking what now? Like, I've trained my whole life to win worlds, and now it's like, well,
luckily Big Z exists, and
and there's multiple times now.
So it's not, because Tom will openly say like he felt a bit lost after winning worlds, and then it's like, but next year if you don't work hard, you won't be world's strongest man anymore. And he's like, no one's taking my title off me. So there we go.
So the why's changed, the motivation's changed, the accountability is different, and I think that's the thing. Like, a lot of the stuff that I do now, it's just to try and people would judge you on their opinion of what is possible for themselves. So I say quite a lot on podcasts, like, don't put a glass ceiling on yourself that's built on other people's foundations. Because so many people looked at my 48 and was like, he's a big man, he's got no running pedigree, he's not going to do 48 marathons, because for them, they couldn't conceive doing it. So I never see it as a judgment of me, it's a judgment of them and how hard they would find that. So, but what a lot of us do is then go, oh, well, so many people think this is a bad idea, or I can't achieve it, so I just won't. And then they don't. And then their opportunity is missed, and then they look back and think, oh, what if I'd have tried? And so for me as well, I always want to look back on my life when I'm on my deathbed and think, I would rather have been, I tried and I failed, than I never even attempted it. So that kind of all ties in to the why I do it, and why I've committed so much of my time over the last year and the next few years around charity, just to hopefully show my kids and the people around me that you can make a difference and you can achieve whatever you want.
Yeah, and you're doing it for, I suppose, in some ways selfish reasons, in the sense of you want to feel that challenge, but everything you've done has been sort of the phrase of the greater good. Like, there's been a bigger reason behind it.
The thing is with a lot of these charity stuff is like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah.
Like, if you raise money for charity, people criticise you because it's an exercise in your own ego. And then if you don't do anything, then it's like, well, what are you doing to help others?
Yeah.
So like, I could have just, like, I'm not saying I could have done, but what if I'd have just donated to so we raised £41,000 with the 48 marathons. Let's just say I donated 40 grand to charity. They still have got criticised. Oh, splashing his cash and trying to show off because he can donate 40 grand. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So people will always criticise whatever you do in that instance. But there's an almost misunderstanding with these charity challenges that it's almost like it has to be pure. It can only be for the charity. But you don't put yourself through hell to raise that amount of money just for a charitable cause. There is always going to be an underlying sense of ego, test, challenge. Can I do it? Can I prove others wrong? And that's what then folds into the purity of raising money for a charitable cause. And that's what really frustrates me with a lot of people, where it's like, he's just doing that charity challenge to raise Instagram followers. And you're like, even if the 48 was an elaborate marketing plan to generate more Instagram following, it still generated £41,000 for a charitable cause.
And you still did it.
And I still did it. And I think that's the problem with a lot of people that then don't do some of the stuff that they maybe think they want to, or they don't run a marathon because they think others will laugh at them, or they think, it's just, well, why should I sponsor you? Because it's an exercise in your own ego rather than for the charity. And it's just like, people criticise you, whatever, but there is a combination of doing these charity challenges between the purity of the cause and your own ego. Yeah. And those two combined is what then generates the biggest challenges, the most money, the most fundraising, and the biggest impact.
Yeah, and it was incredible to follow the journey online for the 48. Like, the not daily but regular foot updates were horrific.
Yeah.
The amount of people who are like, when's he going to quit? Why hasn't he quit? He's going to fail. Oh, he's done it. And it just seemed to be this like constant, not attacking, but like trying to undermine what you were doing. And then even when you did it, like, people seem to just want to be arseholes about it. But none of them have done that.
Yeah.
So, like, how much of that negativity came through to you whilst you were during the actual process?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that people would judge you by their own standards, and they'll judge you by what they think they're capable of doing. And then if they think they're not capable of doing it, but you're doing it, unfortunately, there's a large population of people in the world that then turn that around to then criticise instead of... So if you were doing, let's just say you owned a gym and you were being incredibly successful, I wouldn't look at you and go, what a dickhead. I'd be like, tell me, show me, how are you doing that? How can I learn from you? How can we share some information? I wouldn't be like, what a bellend. It's like, and I hate the whole growth mindset, fixed mindset, because it's so overused by influencers and knobheads, but it comes down to that. And the people that were criticising are those that have got such a fixed mindset about life, people, challenge, pushing themselves. And you've just got to accept that their opinion is their opinion. Yeah. And it's easier said than done. There were times where I was like, I wanted to go and find these trolls on the internet and physically put their head through a window. But then there were times where it motivated me and kept me moving and kept me pushing forward. And I had all sorts from, it's not a legitimate marathon because he's not run the whole marathon every day, and his Strava times are faked. I'd love to know how you can fake a Strava time anyway. Some of his marathons aren't in the exact geographical borders that it was meant to be. It's just like, imagine that's your life. Imagine that's what you wake up in the morning to criticise. But luckily I'd spoken to other people that have done similar challenges. So I spoke to the Iron Cowboy, James Lawrence, who'd done 50 Ironmans and 50 states in 50 days. And... insane. And he said the same. He's like, don't allow external chatter to derail you. It's wasted energy. You need to put all of your energy into moving forward and finishing the challenge, not arguing with idiots online. So that was kind of the approach I took. On day 3 or 4, I actually posted some screenshots to say like what people had been sending me. And then I quickly took it down because I was like, do you know what? I'm just fueling the idiots. I'm just giving them a platform. And the more I give them airtime, the more they think that they're getting in my head. Or because realistically, they want to see me fail to then give them confirmation bias that, oh yeah, well, they're not doing that because no one can do it. Not because chubby ginger kids just run 48 of the things and they're saying they can't run 10k.
It sort of amazes me that so many people assume that they're the pinnacle of performance, or they're like, they approach life like they're the peak. So anyone trying to do something they couldn't do has got to be lying. Whereas like through doing this and through just getting thrown into elite sport as a coach and stuff, I've realised like I know fuck all, and I don't really do a lot, but I get to talk to people who do stuff. And like speaking to you, speaking to the Mulligans, the Stolmans, like Loz, all these people I've spoke to, you go, oh shit, I could do a bit more. I could do this. Like you realise where you actually are. And like for you doing 48 marathons in 48 days, you can then look at someone who did 50 Ironmans in 50 days and go, oh shit, there's more room there. There's like, because what you did it's unbelievable as an achievement. Like, not just as a man of size, which is my way of saying that.
Big boy running club.
It's, what is it? Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura call it the Thick Boy Nation. I'm
on board with that one.
But just to run 48 marathons in a year is like a bit much.
Yeah, it's excessive, isn't it?
And so you just think like, I could probably go for a jog tomorrow. And I won't die. Like it's like if you think you're the peak of performance, you'll never really achieve much.
No, and I think people take it as a personal attack when it's not intended. Like me running 48 marathons isn't going, look how great I am, you're shit, you're lazy. It's I'm just gonna run 48 marathons. Like if you wanna support it and think, oh fair play, he's doing pretty well, I'll chuck a $5 in, I'd appreciate it. If you go can't, like I followed him on Instagram because he had a big deadlift and now he's running, fine, unfollow me, like that's fine. I'm not saying what I'm doing is holier than what you're doing. I'm just saying what I'm doing is what I'm doing. And I think that's a problem. And if you speak to the people, those names that you listed there will all be people that will watch other people that are being perhaps more successful in certain parts of their life, and they'll ask for advice, ask for support, and dig around the subject and see what traits or what behaviors lead to more success. Look at the best athletes in the world. There's a reason why some of the best athletes move around coaches every few years, because they're looking for the next building block, the next thing they need to know, the next thing they're not doing. And I think it goes back to that fixed and growth mindset kind of analogy. Is like if you're viewing whatever everyone else is doing as an attack on what you're doing, you're probably leaving a pretty unhappy life. Like, there's a guy called Will Gooch that just ran 48 marathons in 30 days. And so many people are like... I
mean, first of all, why?
Yeah. So he's a very good, high-standard ultra-distance runner. And he ran to raise money for Macmillan Cancer. And we'd spoken a bit at the start of the year saying, I was going to do 48 days. And he's like, I'm thinking of doing it in 30 days. And I was like, I fucking better get my 48 done then, because he's going to beat me if I don't. And again, like people have sent it, so many people sent me screenshots of it going, oh, have you seen this guy? He's taking your record. And I'm like, fair fucking play to him. Like, I know what it takes to do it in 48 days. So I can't imagine what he's going through in 30. And I look at it and I'm in awe and I'm impressed. And I sent him a congratulatory message. Whereas other people would be like, oh, the fucking prick. And, oh, of course he did it because he's an ultra distance runner and I'm not. And it's
he's
just
got
like,
his shoes and his shoelaces.
He's also like a model for Ralph Lauren, a good looking bastard and got abs. But I'm not jealous of him. I'm just in awe of the achievement because I also know what it takes to run 48 marathons. But I think that's the difference in people that are more fulfilled and generally happier in life.
You see someone doing awesome stuff and you go, like my approach to people doing like you running is, that's fucking amazing. I don't want any part of that, but it amazes me he can do it. you look at Travis Pastrana jumping out a plane without a parachute on and then getting one off his mate. You go, nah, that's really fucking cool. No one would do that. Fair play for doing it. But the amount of people like, he's irresponsible, he's encouraging people to jump out of planes. It's like, who has a plane to jump out of? Like, if you're in a position where you can jump out of a plane, do it. Like, because
I think the problem is that nowadays, that sounds like an old man, but back in the day when I were a lad, everyone's got opinions. They're like arseholes. We've all got an opinion, but the way we voiced our opinions was to our mates around a coffee, around a beer, around a table, on the rugby field, whatever it was. We'd have a chat and I'd tell you what I thought of X. Whereas now we've got our phones, we've got Instagram, we've got social media, and we've all got a platform to tell you that I think you're a dickhead. Yeah. Whereas if you were doing something and I was like, oh yeah, that Dan's a right bellend, I'd just tell my mates and that's probably as far as it will go. Yeah. Whereas now, if I want to, I can send you a message as me. I can create a fake account, send you a message anonymously.
Leave Google reviews.
I can attack you on Google, whatever. I can attack you on Facebook and create a false narrative about you. Like, everyone, like James Smith said on one of his podcasts the other day, like, you're one poorly worded tweet away from cancel culture. Yeah. And it's a very worrying and dangerous place to be. And that's why I guess I've learned over the years to not take others' criticism of how I choose to live my life, because they're not living my life. I have my standards, I have my values, and I have what I believe I'm working towards and what I want to try and promote, and the man of values that I want to be. And if people don't like that, that's cool. You don't have to be in my circle. If you want to send me shit, I'll just block you. I'm not even going to engage in it anymore. And I think that's true. If you look at all there's a lot of stuff in the media at the minute with like footballers saying they're coming off social media because they're sick of the abuse and stuff like that. And I think it's just the world we live in. I mean, who am I? I'm 11,000 Instagram followers. It's not like I'm a multi-millionaire footballer with the European Cup final penalty shootout. I'm just like some fat lad in Worcester that runs a bit, like, and I'm getting shit. So I can only imagine what these guys at the top tier and the top level of sport must get along the way. But yeah, I guess the overriding message goes back to what we were saying earlier, is like, do what you want to do for the reasons that you want to do it, and don't go chasing other people's validation or chasing it based on other people's opinion, because at the end of the day, they're not you.
Yeah, and it's what you do is super impressive. So if people have got an issue with that, also fuck them, because you're doing amazing stuff. And I've realised that, like with social media, it's took me a while to just block people or just ignore them or just like a comment, like comments on YouTube videos. I've made the call that unless someone asks me a direct, sensible question, like I reply to people on YouTube, but otherwise I just like every comment. And it's like, they could be hating on me, it could be something positive, whatever it is, I'm going to read everything, I'll just like it, I don't want to engage. You get questions like, with the latest Stoltman videos, like, Dan looks fat, I'm like, oh cheers, thanks. That's necessary. Like, you've made a conscious decision to go, I'm going to type this out. And like, what I don't understand is, first of all, just fuck off a bit, but also, why? Like, what's made you in their life so unhappy that they've thought, oh, I need to bring other people down?
Yeah, and I had it with when I posted on the 48 during the 48 attempt, when I sent screenshots of on stories what people have been sending me. People tried saying that the screenshots were fake, and that had been basically direct messaging myself with abuse.
Yeah,
and you're like,
you have. That's a normal
yeah, and you're like, because obviously that's the first thing at the top of my list when I finished my 3rd marathon in 3 days.
How can I abuse? What, you were abusing yourself?
Yeah, how can I abuse myself mentally as well as physically?
Oh, my toes have come off. Right.
Yeah, excellent. I'll send myself a
ginger on.
Yeah. So I'm just like, and that's the thing. I think it is, like, you just got to remember it's a reflection of where they are in their life. And I always think, like, if your life is in a position where you've watched a video of content, or you've taken the time to watch something that someone's put together, and then your response is something like what they wrote about you, you just got to remember, like, what pretty poor and negative headspace must they be living in?
Yeah.
And just almost not excuse it, but just go, cool. Fine.
Yeah, like, you're unhappy.
Yeah, you're unhappy, but I'm doing good shit. I'm leaving a positive mark, and I'm helping as many people as I can. you do you, I'll do me. And I've referenced James Smith earlier, but he says another really good thing earlier where someone called him out and he's like, let's compare lives in 10 years time and see who's doing better. Yeah. And it's just like, you just got to remember that, like, these people are the ones that are sitting on the sidelines having a go at you, and it's the whole man in the arena, isn't it? Like, unless you're in the middle of it and you're doing it, then, but it's that whole thing, isn't it? Don't get too excited by your criticism, and don't get too excited by people that say nice things about you, because they can all disappear in a heartbeat. Do it for why you want to do it, and the rest will fall into place from there.
It was really interesting talking to Amy Zicki about it, and she's saying, like, through social media there's been direct changes in frontal lobe development in kids, because, like, when we were kids, again back in the day, God short trousers, walked 90 miles uphill to school in the snow in summer. If you had a problem with someone or something upset you, you had to process it and then make a decision rationally of, how am I going to react to this? And if you were in a pub and you went, why are you being a dickhead? You've made a decision that could lead to getting in a fight with someone. But through that disconnect with the internet, people they literally haven't developed that, because they've never had to filter. You just go, oh, I don't like this, and type it, and there's no consequence, because you press enter. And it's gone.
I saw Eddie Hall challenged Larry Wheels, wasn't it, recently, on something he'd written about Thor decapitating Eddie or something like that. And there were loads of comments saying, oh, ridiculous that you've called him out in person and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, no, that's the point. Like, you can't just hide behind social media. Like, if Larry wants to say X, then Eddie has a right to reply with, okay, well, explain that to me. Whether that's in person or online. Like, but I think there's such a disconnect. It's almost like we live in two different worlds now. There's the online world and the in-person world. And I saw that with a 48. I was running with a couple of people, then they'd messaged me after saying, oh, sorry, I didn't get a chance to speak too much because there was a big group of people. I was like, why the fuck didn't you introduce yourself? Like, we've spoken back and forward on Instagram for a year and we've never met, and I didn't put a face to a name and whatever. And it's almost like if we speak to people online, we then struggle to then speak to them in person. And likewise, we live a world on offline that isn't always congruent with what we promote online. So, but I guess social media, but it's brilliant for many things and terrible for others, but it does more positive than good. I think it brings more people together. Like, we wouldn't be having this conversation now if we hadn't have stayed in touch through Instagram and so on and so forth. So I guess, as I say, people's opinions, everyone's got them, and unfortunately social media has given everyone a platform to use it.
I find that disconnect really weird, and I've not really thought about it, but like at the Arnold last weekend or whenever it was, week before, I got a message on like the Saturday night, because I was there for the 2 days. People were like, oh, we saw you today, but we didn't want to come up. And I'm like, why? Like,
say hello.
Just say hello. Like, if I'm really, like, someone stopped me at another expo and I was in the early stages of pissing myself, and I was like, I really want to talk to you, but I need to deal with this, because I was reffing a competition, like, you've got 5 minutes between events. But then afterwards I was like, let's have a chat. But I think people, because social media can create this barrier, forget that behind 99.9% of social media accounts is a human person. Whether it's positive or negative or whatever you think, it is a human you're interacting with. You're just doing it through a keyboard or through your phone, rather than like this, just chatting face to face. With I'll sort of circle back to the 48, because it blows my mind.
You're out on a bit of a rant about social media there.
Fuck social media, but also like, comment, subscribe, share everything, do all that. What was the charity you did the 48 for?
So it's a charity that I'm a trustee of called Miles for Meals.
Right.
So essentially November last year, lockdown 723, what it felt like. Our gym members have just got fucking sick of Zoom. I was sick of Zoom, and it was like, how can we get something that isn't in front of a laptop? And so there's an appeal locally for fundraising for our local food bank, because they were oversubscribed. Not enough food, too many people using them, furlough, job losses, redundancies, business closures. And it's a cause quite close to my heart. So my dad fell off a roof when I was 11 or 12 years old, paralysed. My mum had to become his full-time carer, and we lived in a council estate, lived off the state because he couldn't work, my mum couldn't work, and we lived in poverty. So we relied on government support to grow up. And it was all this kind of perfect storm, and I was like, right, well, how can we make a difference? So we came up with the idea of 3,000 miles to raise £3,000, which would feed, I think it was 1,000 children at Christmas. We ended up running, I think it was 6,000 miles as a gym community, raised £10,000, and
that's amazing.
Made like a big difference and fed quite a lot of families at Christmas. And then, so yeah, big success, went really well. And then quite a few of the gyms contacted me and were like, oh, can we use this idea? And it was like, well, if there's legs in it, why don't we try and do more than just a one and done? Nearly every charity event I've done is like, you do something, raise money, cool, right, done. Everyone high fives, pat on the back, and then it's right, where are we going to support next? So that was like my first chance. And I hate the word legacy because it's overused and men fantasize too much about their legacy to the world. But it was, can we do a legacy piece around this? Can we turn it, instead of a one and done, can we turn it into a national charity that makes a difference, more broadly speaking? So myself and two other friends decided to try and formally ratify it as a charity. So there were two aims of the charity: raise awareness, because a lot of people don't appreciate how much food banks are used, how many people live in food poverty. And then the second is to essentially raise funding that helps children and families that are basically living in food poverty. And so that's where it came from. So the original idea was to try and do a road show around the country. I got drunk with the rugby lads and we came up with the idea of a marathon a day in every county, and then all of a sudden the 48 was born. So that was the kind of the brief history of why I ran for Miles for Meals, and why the work that I'm going to be doing over the next 12 months will be directly supporting that as well.
So is that your sort of main charity focus now, is supporting Miles for Meals?
The next 12 months. So the only charity event that will be supporting a different charity is the Atlantic Row. And that's,
again,
stupidity. So me and three friends are going to row unsupported across the Atlantic Ocean. More people have summited Everest than have rowed the Atlantic.
When you say unsupported, does that mean you leave England?
So you go from La Gomera, and then you go over to Antigua. So essentially, unsupported means that once you set off, you're on your own. So
no support boats.
Yeah, so there are support boats, but there's 25. I think there's 25 boats in this race. It's an actual race. 1-man cruise, 2-man cruise, and 4-man cruise. So we're doing it as a 4. But obviously that it's 3,000 miles. It's quite a big ocean to cover. So the term unsupported means that no one else can board your boat, no one else can pass you something. So let's say, for example, you're an ocean liner that comes past us. If you get on board and give us a hot meal, we're no longer unsupported. We've been supported and we'd be disqualified. So that's the term unsupported. So there are safety measures, but ultimately if you get washed overboard, you pretty much game over. The ocean survival course we did a couple of weeks ago put it in perspective. You've got about 2 hours before you die from hypothermia if you go overboard. So
the ocean really doesn't give a fuck either.
No, and that's what they said, and we've said, like, the ocean will decide whether we get across that ocean. Not like we can row as hard as we want, but if you've got winds coming the wrong direction and tides coming in the other, then you're going backwards.
Because I did a half marathon row once, just on a rowing machine. Because they did it at the CrossFit Games, and I wanted to see how hard it was. Turns out it's quite hard.
It's really pretty rough. Hamstrings don't like that.
No, I did it in a commercial gym as well, and there was a PT who would walk in, warm a client up, go and do their session, and then he came back and
still on the row
at me and was like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "Half marathon, bad idea." Still go. But so I think that was 23,500 meters, something like that.
22.1 thousand, I think it is.
Of the long distance runner.
Yeah, long runner. No, and I think from memory, a marathon's 44k, so no, it'd be it's for 22k.
Yeah. So what is it in like 3,000 miles?
3,000 miles. So the fastest ever crossing is 28 days by a solo boat, which is mind blowing. But most, most 4-man crews, I think the record is mid 30s. So we're looking at around 30, anything from 35 to 60 odd days at sea. It could, because you ultimately tide, wind, injury, problems with the boat.
You can't just. It's not a rowing machine. You're not just going.
No, you're not going in a straight line. It's you're going on a kind of like an arc, basically. Then you've got different options, whether you back yourself with trade winds or whether you go different ways. And there's a lot of science and theory that sits behind it, which is why we've got much more experienced people with the ocean guiding us in terms of which way to turn. But yeah, so myself and 3 friends are going to do that, and they wanted to raise money for Calm. So that's the only event that I'll be doing in the next couple of years that isn't for Miles for Meals. Everything else will be based around the childhood food poverty.
Rowing the Atlantic is... Because I saw you were planning it and sort of seen bits on Instagram, and you think, that looks like hard, but it can't be that bad. But then when you think like, this is how like people died for a very long time trying to trade the route you're going. Yeah. And they were, with all due respect, much better on the ocean than you.
Like the thing is now, the next 12 months, the stakes are now properly raised. Everything I've done to this point, if I stop, I just stop. If I stopped in the 48, I'm in England. Wave a passerby down. Can you help me get back to wherever it is? I'm in a bit of trouble.
You're like 6 hours from home.
Yeah, like something, and worst case, half an hour from a hospital. Yeah. But Marathon des Sables just happened this year. An athlete died, cardiac arrest on the course, 60-degree temperature. There's a lot of rumours saying that there's actually multiple deaths, although they're not confirmed yet, as everyone's starting to filter back home. Had 70% did not finish rate, which is the highest it's ever been. So by no means am I going out there thinking, I could die. But we're now entering territory of there is a risk.
It's not an easy quit.
No. No, it's 250 kilometres through the Sahara Desert over 5 days. The longest stage being 82 plus kilometres. So you got to do a double marathon in 60-degree heat. So
and that's with that desert marathon, because I'm going to call it that instead.
That's fine. MDS is what they go for that.
Have you got, I suppose, safe houses, sort of staging posts?
Yeah, so it's five stages from memory. The first stage is around 30 kilometres, so just under a full marathon, possibly longer, 30 to 40. They change it every year. Basically, you carry everything that you need for the 5 days. So Station A, Station B, you get to Station B, and then there's tents. But I say tents, it's just a stick with a tarpaulin over it. Yeah. Set up camp for the night, feed yourself, go again the next day to the next station.
Shit. So it's not, I thought it was get to A, someone will jump in a Jeep, take all your stuff to B.
No. So you carry your pack with you. So I think that the maximum your pack is allowed to weigh is 25 kilos. The top runners are carrying 6 to 7 kilos, I think, from memory. But you've got to have your food, your sleeping bag, your gaiters, your walking poles. The whole shebang is in your backpack. The only thing you don't have to carry is water. They'll give you water, but only 8 litres.
Is that 8 litres for the
day?
Okay,
per day.
That's less. I mean, it's still very horrific, but it's less like...
It's not like rationing that for 5 weeks, 5 days.
What's the record for it? Can you only do it in 5 days, or can you...
Yeah, so you can't do it any faster. You've got to do each stage. So it's basically a race from A to B on day 1, and then the fastest time going a leaderboard, and then you go again day 2 and the fastest time. It's a bit like Tour de France.
Okay.
Basically. So yeah, if you complete it, you're doing pretty well. If you get in the top 100, you're doing very, very well. So there are safety elements to an extent because you do have doctors there and so on and so forth, but you get time penalties if they have to give you intravenous fluid and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's like, so you've literally got people like hugely dehydrated that are not taking medical advice because they don't want a time penalty.
Because they want to be in the top.
They want to be in that top X
wanna...
amount. And for me, the joy of being bang average at running is my expectation is to complete it, not to compete in it.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm going out there and it's the first truly solo expedition that I'll have done, because you don't have your phone, you don't have your family, you don't have access to the outside world. It's just you in the desert, 5 days, 250 kilometers. Right, let's have it. Let's see where we're at.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
But sounds really exciting.
Yeah,
well.
You got one of the mandatory pieces of kit as an anti-venom kit, just in case. Yeah, it's pretty punchy. And yeah, so we've kind of like, I think the thing is with challenges, it's like it escalates. So it was like, we'll run 2 marathons in 2 days with the 4 for 48. Fuck it, let's do 48 and 48.
Yeah.
And now we're into the right, let's do an ultra marathon through the desert in what's called the world's toughest foot race. And then let's row an ocean where 10% of people that have tried have died. So
that's a high percentage.
Yeah, it's pretty high, but it's also low numbers, remember, because it's...
Yeah, I suppose, like, if 10 people have attempted it...
And 1 died, then it's 10%.
Yeah.
So, whereas more people, like I said earlier, more people have summited Everest than have rode the Atlantic, so the numbers are skewed a little bit to make it sound worse than it is. But the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge is considered the world's toughest ocean race. The Marathon des Sables considered the world's toughest foot race. And as far as I'm aware, no one's ever done both in a 12-month period.
Jesus,
so
you're going to learn to fly next time.
Yeah, well, that's in what space next, and I'm like, my bank balance is not deep enough to hang around with the owner of Amazon.
But if anyone wants to send you to space,
yeah, I'm in. I'll be across big boys in space. I'm in. But no, we are now in the realms of like proper stupidity. But I think that's where the thing is as well. Like for me, it's now we are into the realms of really now challenging myself, and it's. Yeah, how tough am I? How much can I endure? What can I go through? And you do have, for me, they're always reference points, they're anchors. There have been bad times in your life that when it's really shit day to day, you'll look back and go, I overcame that, so I can. Yeah. This is nothing compared to that, and that's what these things become to
really
me. So
some bad days.
Yeah, and so the 48 to me is like if I'm having a really shit day or training's not going well or I'm just not motivated, I can remember that. Well, actually,
your little toe nearly came.
Yeah,
off.
you've run 48 marathons, mate. If I can get on with it, so they're just reference points and anchor points that mean that I remind me that I'm more capable than I sometimes believe, and I can achieve more than I necessarily let myself think sometimes.
Have you said no to anything yet? Is there anything where you've been like, oh no, that's too fucking stupid?
No, not yet.
Sort of doesn't shock me. But...
No, the thing is, like, it's the circles you hang around in, isn't it? The more you hang around in the endurance world, the more stupid shit's probably going to get thrown or suggested. To be fair, I think there is nothing planned after the Atlantic Row. We'll see where we end up when we've done that, because that will have then been 3 years dedicated to these charity challenges. And if we do everything that we want to with that and Marathon des Sables and what we've done so far, that'll be touching on £500,000 that we've raised for charity through everything that I've been involved in, not all just my work, but stuff that I've been involved in. So at that point, we'll reevaluate and then see, right, are we done, or is there still more I want to do? But the thing is as well, like, it is a bit of a selfish pursuit because it costs a lot of money to do these things. Marathon des Sables is £5,000 entry fee. It's not cheap, and
I suppose it's got aside from the logistics, setting a reasonably high entry fee limits arseholes trying to do it.
Yeah, it limits stupidity. It's the same as the Atlantic Row, so that'll be roughly around £25,000 a man. When you add in cost of the boat, cost of rations, all the training you have to do, and getting out there, getting back, getting the boat there, so on and so forth. So it does create a barrier to entry. So you don't just get 4 pissed up lads go, I'll row the Atlantic, and then turn up in a little dinghy.
That's literally what happened. You've just got to fancy a boat.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. So yeah, pretty much. And we just managed to pass the basic test to get allowed onto the water. But that's the good thing about it. Obviously, doing them because I know a few people that have done non-race based, so like purely solo. It's just them that have rowed the Atlantic. But the good thing about the Talisker one is that it does offer you a sense of there's a minimum standard you have to achieve to be allowed to do it. So at least you know going into it, you don't have to ask that question of have I done enough to be out here safely, because you've hit that minimum standard of what they say is enough to be a competent seaman. Everyone wants to be a competent seaman.
I suppose you'll have a transponder.
Yeah, but if you go overboard, it'll only last 24 hours. If you go outside of 200 miles from land, you're no longer reachable by helicopter.
Yeah, of course.
So you've got a 2,600 mile window where you're relying on passing ships, and that you're not too far from a support boat if you do go over. So yeah, you've got to have very good admin, be very on top of your day to day. Well, you clip onto the boat basically, so you've got a harness, and you clip onto the rope that runs along the boat.
Yeah. So
when you're out of your sleeping cabin and you're on deck, you're always roped on. You've got a transponder in your belt, but obviously if you go overboard, depending on the temperature of the sea, you're looking at around 2 hours before hypothermia gets you. And that's hoping that your transponder actually goes off and doesn't die before they find you. So yeah, it's pretty, you literally are like, the margin for error is very small, but the error that will happen will be a human error more than anything.
Which is sort of more reassuring.
Yeah, and I think that the thing is that you're still in control, because if your boat goes over and you're still tied to it, then they're self-righting boats, so you can flip it back and you can get back in. So you may lose everything, but as you can set off your GPS, you can set off your GPS SOS type stuff, and if you're still on your boat, it's then just wait for someone to come get us.
This is going to be shit, but
we'll tough it out. We've got enough food and we can survive a fair few days at sea. But if you go overboard, that's where you're in danger of your chances of survival if you go overboard and not roped on are minimal.
Yeah, so rope on
at all times, and that's the irony of it. Like, you don't appreciate the outcome, the terminal outcome if you don't do it until you go on these ocean survival courses. And the woman that was running it was like, yeah, when I rode the ocean, I didn't bother wearing a life jacket because I knew if I went overboard, I was dead anyway. So if I had a life jacket, then it just delayed the inevitable. I was like, that's a pretty sobering thought. so yeah, it's it's a pretty unique challenge. But again, you finish it and look back and think, well, if we do everything we want to do, we'll have raised £250,000. I'll have rode an ocean with 3 mates and done something that not many people have ever done before. So yeah, it's the next big adventure.
It's quite an adventure though. It's inspiring to hear how casual you are about putting yourself through hell for charity and for, as we've said, slightly selfish reasons to feel challenged. But you've done, like, the 48 was horrific. Like, it looked horrific from the outside.
Yeah, I can confirm it was.
Excellent. The MDS is going to be fairly terrible.
I mean, a ginger going in the desert, mate. It's either way, I'm struggling.
I mean, you'll get found.
I'll have to carry a kilo of sun cream, let alone all my food and supplies.
Get them to blend up a special factor 100
and sunblock for that one.
And then the row's going to be. It sounds daft. If it's good weather and it's not stormy and everything goes to plan, pretty boring though, isn't it? Yeah, but how hard is it going to be? So you're 2 hours on, 2 hours off until you get there. So that's pretty much the way most crews work it. So there's two guys. It's two of us row, whilst the other two go off into the sleeping cabins, sleep, come back up, eat, get back on the oars, change over, and then repeat. So the only time that you won't have 2 people rowing is if there's obviously an emergency you've got to deal with, or you've got really bad weather and it's pointless rowing because you're just not going anywhere. So you just chuck the power anchor out and sit in your cabin and ride out the storm. Jesus. So yeah, it's pretty punchy. Like 2 hours on, 2 hours off for 30-40 days is like, it's pretty tough. Like, a lot of people that I've spoken to have said it's not the training element that gets you, it's the sleep deprivation. Like, one of them was telling me how they realised they were hallucinating when they saw a purple dragon fly out of the sea and explode into the sun. I was like, yeah, I think you can definitely confirm that didn't happen. So you were definitely hallucinating. If that was the limit, what went on before that? Yeah, exactly. that you didn't actually think was not normal. Yeah, me and the Queen were rowing across and this dragon came up, and I said to Liz, this is weird. But yeah, and you've also got the other element. Like, a lot of people go, oh, you'll see these amazing sunsets, and you have all this wildlife around you, but then other people have been, I was at sea for 20 days, didn't see another boat, another piece of
wildlife or the sunsets were shit. I was like,
okay,
cool. And then another crew said they were followed by a shark for 4 days. So you're like, well, swings and roundabouts. And then another crew got their boat speared by a marlin.
What?
Yeah, so they've recommended that we now line the boats with Kevlar.
No, that's not a real thing.
Genuine.
That's like cartoon
He was
stuff.
in the sleeping compartment, and the marlin's tusk came through and missed him by inches.
Straight up cartoon shit.
Yeah, genuine. Like, how did John die at sea? Well, he got stabbed by a fish.
They were
Sounds like an elaborate excuse. Yes, Your Honour, that's definitely what happened. It wasn't us that stabbed him. But yeah, so like, honestly, there's loads of risks out there that you don't even think about, and then that's not even talking about dehydration, your water purifier not working, and shit going wrong on your boat. Like, we've had to pass ocean survival courses, so we did the other day on navigation. So if our electronics fail, we know how to read maps and compasses, and then if that fails, we now know how to find north by looking at the stars and what they're doing and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot of risks that you wouldn't even consider, but that's part of the challenge, isn't it? And that's what we do. But I guess at the end of the day, for me, it's just my version of hard is my version of hard.
Yeah.
And I think this is where a lot of people get it all a little bit twisted, is like, for you, your version of hard might be doing 5K.
Yeah.
And that is no less of an achievement than me running 48 marathons, because that is you progressing, challenging yourself, pushing yourself outside your comfort zone and doing something that for you is hard. So I guess anyone that follows me or listens to this story and everything else thinks, oh, fucking hell, I could never do that. And it's not about my version of hard in comparison to you. It's about your version of hard and how hopefully it shows you that you can push harder with your hard, and I can push harder with my hard.
Yeah.
Although I'm not sure what level of hardness comes after rowing an ocean. But
no, just after running a desert as
yeah,
well. Just to like really rub it in.
We'll figure it out.
So
there is a South Pole marathon, but I don't think I'll deal with the cold. But yeah, it's the next 12 months are pretty punchy in terms of what's coming up, and alongside trying to compete in strongman as an under 105 as well. So we'll see whether we can fit that in.
Which is going to be really good to see. Like,
hopefully, I think people have almost set an unrealistic expectation in a way. I think people are, John's going to come back and smash it, and like the world of strongman has moved on incredibly since I was last competing.
It's scary.
Yeah, it's mad.
I mean, Dale, who I coach now, 3D strength, amazing coach in his own right, but he's pulling 400 at under 105. 175 strict log, and you think like
it's genuine, but like it's the more people that are coming to sport, the more athletes are getting found, and the more progress that you're seeing on those numbers. Like I remember when I pulled 400, I think there was me, Andy Bolton, Loz, I think Bish had pulled 400, Eddie Hall, and I think there's like 8 of us that had pulled 400 in the last 18 or 24 months, whereas now, like you say, under 105s are pulling 400.
Yeah, it was 400 for reps at a Giants the world log and deadlift.
I remember when I pulled 400, the world record was still, I think it was Benny Magnussen's like 436 or whatever it was, and now it's 75 kilos more than that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the world is strong, and the thing is for me, I'm going back into strongman just to enjoy it. Like, people are, do you want to be the first person to win British under 105 natties and the opens? And I'm like, just want to have a crack, enjoy it, test myself, see where I'm at. Like, I'm not going into it with an
row an ocean, do some 105s comps.
Yeah, that's the thing. If I can get to Britain's natties as a 105, run 250 kilometers through the desert, complete Ironman UK in July, and row an Atlantic Ocean, then I've had a good year.
You also very casually dropped in the Ironman.
Oh yeah, I'm doing that as well.
Well, just in between desert running and rowing an ocean.
Yeah, I'm going to swim a bit and bike a bit as well. But
I suppose it's a good warm up for.
Yeah, bigger things to come. But no, so the irony is, originally I was going to do an Ironman, then I was going to do MDS, and then I was thinking of doing something stupid like the 48. COVID came along and it's all been done in reverse. So we've done the stupidly impossible thing first. Yeah. Then we're doing the stupidly hard thing first, and then the Ironman's almost like a bit of a footnote now. Just
do an Ironman.
Well, the thing is, like, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm massively respectful of the distance, the challenge, and the challenge that it will pose. But yeah, it's not something. Well, it's like I did a half Ironman 3 weeks after the 48, and it was just because you know you can suffer for 48 days, you know you can suffer for 6 hours, so just get on with it. And that was, as long as you can swim without drowning, which are questionable on that half Ironman. When you look at the GPS, I think I actually went backwards at one point. I saw
your GPS. It's just like, good, bad.
Yeah, I got kicked in the face and my goggles steamed up and I was like a bit woozy. And then I looked at the GPS and realised I'd gone back on myself. But anyway, we got it done, enjoyed it, ticked a box. But yeah, again, like a lot of people, people will train for years to do a half Ironman, and I did it without real much consideration. But that doesn't mean that makes me any better than those guys that it's their pinnacle and that's what they're training towards. It's just that's what I now define as hard, and what their hard might be as well. And I think that's where people get a bit despondent at their own progress sometimes, because they watch other people do stuff and make it seem so easy, and then it makes them feel that what they've done isn't as incredible as they maybe felt it should be. So it's just, I guess, a reminder to anyone listening that your version of hard is yours and yours alone. So if you've done something that is pushing your boundaries, don't compare it to someone else's hard, because there'll always be someone, like you say, the Iron Cowboy did 101 Ironmans in 101 days. Like, there's always someone bigger, better, stronger, faster. So just embrace what you've achieved rather than comparing it to everyone else.
I feel like, where are we? We're sort of an hour into. I feel like that's a really good message to end on, because there's so much we could go into though, because quickly-ish. So the business side of stuff. Yeah. You had was it Fitness 360? Yeah. So was that was your gym to start with? Or?
Yeah, so I opened that 7 years, maybe 8 years ago, and was the first to bring small group personal training into the Worcestershire area. It grew from a 10 by 10 box into a 3-site business. Then we bought a couple of martial arts studios. Well, we bought a martial arts studio and then installed an extension of that into one of the other Fit 360s. So yeah, pre-COVID, it was 3 sites of Fit 360, 2 martial arts studios, and all singing or dancing. Team of I think 14 staff members at one point. And the Fit 360 Worcester is one of the largest independent gyms in the UK.
Does that still exist?
Yeah, so basically my business partner and I decided to go in different directions. Probably a conversation not to be had on air, but we just wanted different things out of the business. Didn't see eye to eye anymore on a few different things, and so he wanted to expand and grow, and I, to be honest, didn't enjoy it. And it goes back to, again, how you define hard is for you to define. How you define success is for you to define. And what I'd done over 7 years is systematically define success by other people's version of success. And it was more gyms, more clients, more members, more coaches. And I was happiest when I first opened the gym, a little 10 by 10 box with my 40 clients, just loving what I did. So long story short, I sold the business to my business partner. Sold the main gym, so the largest gym, the one in Worcester, he now runs, and the brand is now his. Turned the city centre gym into Sanger's, which is now a gourmet sandwich and deli shop.
Which I would love to visit.
Which
I got fat, so no more sandwiches. But
and then I kept my Malvern gym and rebranded it to Rise Fitness. So I still own a gym, but it's one business as part of essentially a 5 business portfolio. So we got the gym, we got consultancy, got an online coaching company. We do level 3 education, so educate coaches coming into the industry, and then Sanger's deli, sandwich and pizzeria. The business side's been quite busy as well, and that was as a result of me taking that step back from strongman, like we spoke about at the very beginning. But again, like there's all sorts of different lessons and messages from the business side, in terms of you don't know that you don't want it until you've got it sometimes. And a lot of us chase this utopia of more money, more people, more clients, and we get there and we're like, well, actually we were happiest when
you had time.
When we had time, and I could enjoy coaching, and I knew my members' names, and and so on and so forth. Because the thing is, I got into the industry to coach because I cared about people and I wanted to make a positive impact.
Yeah.
And then 3 sites and all the other stuff that comes with it, you become a glorified accountant and spreadsheet manager. So so a lot of lessons there in terms of if you are going to do something pretty hard, because the business growth is hard, as you can imagine, growing that quickly and that amount of growth, do it for reasons that you actually do see, that you measure success as, not what other people. Because it's funny now that I sold the businesses and announced it in January, February this year, and the amount of other gym owners that message me saying, "What you doing? I can't believe you're doing that." Like, because that's how they deem success to be, is more gyms, more members.
Loads of members.
Yeah, whereas other people are like, may deem me as less successful now I have less gyms, but I deem myself as more fulfilled, more happy, and just as financially as successful as I was with 3 gyms.
It's, I spoke to Mike Bledsoe, and I think his name is Danny Alvarez, he's like a life coachy thing in the States. He ran Barbell Shrug podcast back in the day, done loads of stuff, and sort of chatting to him online on and off, and he's like, sort of valuing yourself and your time. Once you learn to do that, you realise what you actually want out of life. And I've reduced client numbers, sort of reduced what I'm doing. I've set working hours for the first time, because I used to wake up at like 3 o'clock in the morning to go to the toilet, and I'd check my phone and see what people were doing. And then since reducing everything, service has got better, you're helping people more, happier, and it's just learning what you value and then chasing that.
Yeah, exactly that. Like, for me, I built a life that I needed a holiday from.
Yeah. And
now I have a life that I haven't gone on a holiday this year. I ran 48 marathons and I missed home.
Yeah.
Whereas 2 years ago, I'd have not been able to take that time off, and I'd be looking at when can I next go to Canada and just get away from everything. And whereas now I absolutely love the life that I have. And for me, a lot of people talk about fulfillment and happiness, and you have to find happiness. Then for me, happiness isn't a destination. It's, you could win the lottery today, but then you crash your car on the way home and you go from happy to sad. So you haven't reached happiness through financial gain. For me, happiness is creating a life that gives you as many daily opportunities to feel fulfilled and to feel happy. And that's what I now focus on. So everything that I do, every decision I make on business and personal life and friendships, relationships, is this going to add value? Is this going to help me create more opportunities to enjoy my day to day? Or is it creating more stress, more worry, just for an arbitrary number of more income or more gyms or more sandwich shops and so on and so forth?
More sandwich shops.
Yeah, and it's the same with the challenges, and that's why I've not set anything past the Atlantic Row.
Yeah,
it's
let's
get there, and then let's reevaluate, because I'm not the same person I was 12 months ago. So in 14, 15 months' time, when I land in Antigua, I might be different again.
Much
and then
bigger beard.
Yeah.
So
it's an interesting one, and there's a lot of comparisons that as the business has grown, changed, developed, and been sold, there's those lessons that are folded into me being an athlete and an endurance challenger, whatever you define my status as an athlete is, I guess. But yeah, that's the overwhelming concept: is define your version of success, define your version of hard, and get after that. Don't compare. Don't say what you've done isn't as good as them because they did more. If what you did was good for you, then that's good for you. And build on your foundations, not other people's. And that's what I've learned over the years since Strongman, retiring, and doing all the stupid shit that I've done since.
Yeah, I feel like that's a slightly better message to end on as well. So you can pick a point when to stop listening to this podcast, either right now or back then. But if you heard this, you've not stopped, so
they're still with us. Like, follow, subscribe.
Yeah, all of that. Do all that to us. I'll put your social media stuff in the description. I'll put links to Miles for Meals, any other charity stuff. We'll have a chat about what you want and where. Yeah, thank you for joining me, man, and thank you for letting me hijack your kitchen.
No, thank you very much. Just a quick note on Miles for Meals, if I may.
Yeah, 100%.
If anyone's watching, listening, and wants to help the Miles for Meals cause, there's more ways to help than just donating for my stupidity.
Right.
So we're looking for other people that want to run, say, a marathon, other stupid people that maybe want to organise a sponsored school run or a walk, or to basically Miles for Meals.
Okay, so it's not you, it's Miles for Meals, the charity.
Yeah, so it's just to create that distinction, because I think a few people think that Miles for Meals' sole income is my stupidity, which ultimately I have a shelf life of doing that. So we're trying to move it away from me. My challenge was to kickstart Miles for Meals.
Yeah.
The whole point was that we've now planted seeds across the country. So 1,000 people ran as part of the 48. So hopefully some of those will then run their own fundraising events.
Yeah.
So likewise, if anyone's listening and is still with us at this point and wants to run their own event, their own marathon, their own version of the 48, whatever it might be, then get in touch, because we'd love to hear from you, and anything you can do to support us in putting money back into children living in need, then I'd love to hear from you. So thanks for giving me that platform to promote that.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing, and it's not got to be 48 marathons.
No, it could literally be a 5k.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that. Awesome. Right. Thank you, man.